So we are going to talk all about binders used in raw desserts and raw cuisine today. So we're going to go through the specific binders that we're going to be using in things like cake fillings, cake frostings, chocolate, truffles, and cake crusts, because there's other binders, of course, like flax, psyllium, and chia, but those are more for binders for things like crackers and wraps and that sort of thing. So we're going to specifically talk about binders specifically used in raw desserts. So the reason why I wanted to do this video is so that you could see what all of the binders look like before they've been melted down at room temperature, so that you can really understand when you're looking at them the consistency of the binders themselves, so that when you're using them or when you're creating your own recipes, you're going to know exactly which ones to use based on their properties. So super quickly, I'll go over the 5 that I have out here in front of us. And these are the ones that I use in my raw desserts. So we have coconut butter, we have cacao butter, coconut oil, sea moss paste, and agar paste. Now I'm not going to go into full detail about each of the properties, the health benefits of all of that, because you have specific videos on how to make, for example, the sea moss paste, the agar paste, coconut butter, and you can get more information in those lessons. But this video, we're just going to understand the actual binding properties of these ingredients and why I love them so much. Now, firstly, when you look at these ingredients, you can tell which ones are softer and which ones are harder, such as the cacao butter. So let's just start off with the cacao butter. Because cacao butter at room temperature is completely solid. So look at this, at room temperature, it's totally solid. You need a knife in order to cut this. Now, cacao butter has a high melting point of 34 to 38 degrees Celsius. And we all know like cacao butter is from chocolate, right? From the cacao bean. So this has a strong chocolate flavor. So I only use cacao butter in chocolate flavored recipes, because otherwise that bitter flavor is going to come through and everything is going to taste like chocolate, when in fact you don't want everything to taste like that. So cacao butter, because it is very solid at room temperature, this is going to have the strongest binding properties. So this is going to be the strongest binder. So just think about that when you're looking at this and you want to use this in a recipe. You only need a very minimal amount, as opposed to, say, coconut oil, which is much softer, right? Because even at room temperature, look, when I press my finger in here, it is quite soft, more like a paste rather than something hard and solid like cacao butter. Because coconut oil, for example, has a melting point of 25 degrees Celsius. So you'll notice in the summertime in your house, coconut oil is going to be melted all summer long, whereas cacao butter is going to stay solid because it has that higher melting point, which in turn, cacao butter is good to use if you're living in a tropical climate or somewhere really warm and you want your cakes to be left out at room temperature for a little bit without them melting, or just to give them that stronger binding property. So the next strongest one is coconut butter. So you can see here between coconut butter and coconut oil, the coconut butter is much more solid and firmer at room temperature. So here when I press it, it's still quite solid. It looks pretty grainy. And the reason why that is because coconut butter is ground up dried coconut meat from mature coconuts, not young coconut, right? So I just want to make that really clear. And we have the video in the course on how to do the coconut butter and how to make it yourself. You're just blending dried or desiccated coconut. And then you want to make sure too, when you're using coconut butter in recipes, that you're going to have that coconut flavor, because it has a very strong coconut taste, because it is just coconut. So use it in recipes where you want that coconut flavor. So next we have 2 neutral flavored binders, which is sea moss paste and agar paste. Now you wouldn't use these in place of, say, these 3, because these are going to give completely different binding properties. Now agar is traditionally used, we use it on its own to make like a beautiful top cheesecake layer. You can see how firm this is. It's very strong. I mean, this is like a jello, right? Like a jello consistency or like a gummy consistency. It's super firm at room temperature. We've already made this paste and set it, so this is why it looks like this. Whereas sea moss paste is much softer. So we use these in recipes as a binder and thickener, but in different ways than these three. These are like the main binding ingredients that we use, say for like cheesecakes and crusts, but then we can also use these to replace a lot of the fat and a lot of the bulk, and you'll see that we use these in, say, like raw breads or cakes to give that cakey texture, or donuts, for example. And so just keep that in mind when you are trying to figure out which binding ingredients you want to use when you're developing your recipes. But also too, just to have that background and knowledge when you're creating the recipes from the course at home and you're wondering why we're using these certain ingredients. So I hope that gives you some more information on these binding ingredients and to understand why we use them and why you would want to use them when you're creating your recipes. And just refer to the download also for more information, and then let me know if you have any questions.